Assalamualaikum and salam sejahtera. Warm greetings to Prof. Madia, Dr. Mashiha and fellow friends. Today, our group would like to present about an issue related to food and agriculture. So here's other member. Me, myself, is Nur Sharafatin binti Ahmad Ghazi, and others are Muhammad Amirul Ashraf bin Ahmad and Muhammad Shazani bin Roslat. Before we start, we would like to brief a bit about our topic. There are 6 issues overall, which are cloning, genetic modification organism, food production and processing, halal issues, septic tank, sludge disposal, and the other 2 related to the COVID-19 issues. Okay, the first issue arise is cloning. According to the genetic science learning, cloning is an alternative way of producing livestock for the human consumption. It can be utilized in medicine to resurrect endangered species and to assist producer who wants to improve the genetic of their herd. And in other words, it's a way to produce copies of animal by asexual means. And it can be achieved in 2 possible ways, which is to utilize embryonic cells and the other one somatic cells nuclear transfer SCNT that actually gave us Dolly, the first adult mammal to be cloned by British biologists from Edinburgh, Scotland. Okay, the issue is that a question of sustainability. Cloning currently has a 10% success rate and it costs an average of $15,000 to clone a cow and $4,000 to clone a pig. Even though cloning has many advantages, it is costly and has a poor success rate and many embryo do not survive. Its success is not always guaranteed to the high pregnancy losses and high morbidity and high mortality during the neonatal era, implying that it is not a long-term solution as compared to the conventional practices. Okay, the impact of the cloning on the animal welfare, there's a 3 impact. The first one is the impact on the mother animal after new material inserted into the oocyte or egg cell. In pigs, sheep, goats, the egg cell implantation always involve the surgery, and it has the more negative effect than the less invasive procedure in the juvenile animal. The second one, impact on the offspring when the egg cell develop into an individual animal, which is high level of mortality in utero, in which 27% of pregnancies survive to term. And the last one, impact on welfare of individual descendant in later generation by means high rates of deformities an animal will encounter with several common heart problems, such as, encounters several common health problems, such as hydroelectrolysis, a respiratory problem, urinary problem, and etc. Okay, moving on to the second issue, which is genetic modification organism. Okay, according to the National Geographic, briefly, genetically modified organism is an animal, plant, and microbe whose DNA is altered using the genetic engineering techniques. These modern advances in biotechnology has allowed the scientists to directly modify the DNA of microorganism, crops, and animal. Okay, they also stated that approximately 90% of the corn, soybean, canola, cotton, and sugar beets on the market are GMOs and constitute the vast majority of the GM crop production. And the GM crop production has been commercially for since 1995. Okay, crops that has been genetically modified are produce higher yields, have a longer shelf life, are disease and pest resistant, and also tasted better. Okay, both farmer and consumer would benefit from these advantages. Okay, higher yields and longer shelf lives, for example, can result in a lower price for the consumer. And pest-resistant crop means farmers do not need to use too many pesticides or need to buy lots of pesticide to produce a high-quality crops. And as a result, GMO crops can be environmentally friendly than conventionally grown crops. Okay. The issue is that cross-pollination between organic crops and GM crops. Okay, organic cross-pollination is the occur through the pollinators and the wind, also known as the pollen drift, okay, which can result in a cross-contamination between GMO and non-GMO plants. Pollen from a farmer's genetically modified crops will carry over to a nearby non-GMO field and causing a cross-contamination. Okay, in this case, contamination via cross-pollination does just not impact the non-GMO crop, but also the organic crop as well. Okay, as we can see from the Guardian article, organic farmer will now face the issue of wind-blown seed and pollen from the GM crop contaminating their field, jeopardizing their viability as the organic farmers. Due to this requirement, organic farmers end up bearing the burden of avoiding GMO present from crop planted by their neighbors. And as we can see from the table, the costs for preventative measures are costly. So the impact of GMO crop farming, first one is cross-pollination. Okay, outcrossing of GM crops to non-GM crops are related with the wild-type plant, as well as the unintentional mixings of GM plant and non-GM crops has resulted into a few problems. Because of the asynchronous deregulations of GM crop around the world, the unintended involvement of GM crops in food feed trade network can cause a serious trade and economic issues. Okay, the second one is environment. Okay, for currently commercialized GM crops, the potential environment impact are mostly related to how these crop impact farming system. Also, the effect on the transgenic on the natural landscape, significance of the gene flow, impact on the non-target organism, progressions of the pest resistance, and impact on the biodiversity. And the last one, human health. Some genetically modified plants contain genes that make the plant resistant to the certain antibiotics. So scientists often add these resistant genes during the genetic modification so that the GM plant and cell can be distinguished from the non-GMs one. The use of the antibiotic resistant as a marker in the transgenesis procedure can facilitate the antibiotic resistant development in pathogen. They are a threat to the human health.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Muhammad Amirul Ashraf bin Akmal, and today I will show you about the food production and processing and the halal issue. So first of all, I will explain about the issue that happened in the food and agriculture production. Nowadays, agriculture is the dominant form of land management globally. This human influences on the food land is accelerating because of the rapid population growth and increasing of the food requirement. This causes pressure on land resources and the world environment. This is why food and agriculture is a top priority in the environmental policy. The issue that arises on the food and agriculture production is the impact of the environment. Agriculture is the most destructive industry facing the world today. So here is why. It comprises our world to the climate change, poor management of water, the uncontrollable use of land. Agriculture production implicates a need a lot of resources to be done successfully, and this is why it gives a negative impact to the environment. First of all, the impact of the agriculture production to the environment is the climate change and the global warming. This has the consequences of many levels. Because the oceans where the ice sheet starts melting, causing the sea level to increases and temperature also increases. Because of the increasing temperature around the world, the weather such as drought and floods are becoming more extreme. Food crops are becoming more difficult because of the weather that eliminates the water supply. The pollution of air water supply also will give the effect on the health of human population. According to the UN Food and Culture Organization, in most regions of the world, over 70% of fresh water is used for agriculture. By 2050, feeding a planet of 9 billion people will require an estimated 50% increase in agriculture production and a 50% increase in water withdrawal. In the industrial livestock farm, there are usually come out an issue where during a concentrated animal feeding operation that contain the animal waste in their farm, it has been known that the farm has a leakage and pour out to the river. So this will give a big impact to the environment as well. There, as you can see for the chart, shows that agricultural land in Malaysia was reported at 26.26% in 2016, according to the World Bank collection of development indicators. It also reported that the trend of the land use for the food production will increase until 2030. In the visualization, we see that the breakdown of global land area today: 10% of the world is covered by glaciers, and a further 90% is barren land deserts, dry salt flats, beach, sand dunes, and exposed rock. This leaves what we call the habitable land. Half of the habitable land is used for agriculture. This leaves only 37% for forests, 11% as shrub and grassland, 1% as freshwater coverage, as the remaining 1% as much smaller share than many suspect is built up urban area, which include cities, towns, villages, roads, and other human infrastructure. There is also a highly unequal distribution of land use between livestock and crops for human consumption. If we combine pasture used for grazing with land used to grow crops for animal feed, livestock accounts for 70% of global farming land. While livestock take up most of the world agriculture land, it only produces 18% of the world calories and 37% of total protein. The expansion of agriculture has been one of humanity's largest impact on the environment. It has transformed habitat and is one of the greatest pressure for biodiversity. About of the 28,000 species evaluated to be threatened with extinction of IUCN Red List, agriculture is listed as threat for the 24,000 of them. What should we do to control the impact of food agriculture production on the environment? We can reduce the impact both through the dietary changes by substituting some meat with plant-based alternatives and through technology advance. Crop yields have increased significantly in recent decades, meaning we have spared a lot of land from the agriculture production globally to produce the same amount of crops as in 1961. We need only 30% of farmland. With solutions from both consumer and producer, we have important opportunity to restore some of this farmland back to the forest and natural habitats. Next is about the halal issue. For the overview, in today's global market, regardless of industry, organizations are surrounded by competitors. Approximately, the global population of Muslims has reached more than 1.9 billion, which creating global interest from food producers worldwide. According to the graph shows that the increasing of the Muslim population by the time. Thus, the Muslim will have a significant buying power and subsequently will affect the demand of the halal food. Halal is an Arabic word which carries the meaning of being lawful and permitted. Halal also refers to anything that is free from any component prohibited for the Muslim consumption. One must understand that the halal concept is accompanied with the concept of tayyiban, which refers to the wholesomeness of purified, safe, and nutritious. When it comes to dietary, Muslims are obligated to consume food that is permitted and lawful. The products consumed by the Muslim consumer must be free from the contamination of haram or unlawful substances. The issues that came out from the halal issue is the uncertainty of the substances used in halal product. In today's global market, the concept of halal can no longer be restricted to simply meaning food that is pork-free. Besides, it covers a multitude of forms such as emulsifier and other food content, for example, gelatin, enzyme, lecithin, and glycerin, as well as additives such as stabilizer, flavoring, and colorings. This contributes to food that has been enhanced or added by dark food substances or animal enzyme into the halal food products and questionable in Islamic law. The growing advance of food industry today has provided a variety of food substances that initiate from either a plant or animal origin. Notably, the Muslim consumer assessment of the halal product was most likely affected by how they are familiar with the product ingredient. Most of the time, consumers are unable to determine which foods are halal simply by reading the label on the packaging of the product. This is due to the fact that some producers are use specific terminology of the component in their product, in which the terms are mostly probably unformatable by the average consumer. Therefore, some consumers tend to be suspicious of the substances used in the product because of their unfamiliarity with the content. The substance can be only recognized after going through the specific examination of the product by certain bodies. There are cases that reported by Berita Harian on 19 October 2020 where the pile of imported products based on dairy, spice, cooking oil and canned product which halal status is in doubt was increasing seriously in the market. Moreover, the food product that imported was sold and highly demand among Malaysian consumers, including Muslims. This situation raises questions regarding the compliance of the management, importing companies, and food product business operators from abroad with Jakim. According to the Malaysian Muslim Consumer Association (PPIM) chief activist Dato' Nazim Johan said, Jakim can improve the foreign halal logo review mechanism such by developing a simple application for consumers to check or look into the detail of the food products. Besides, Jakim can introduce a QR code so that the consumer or user can check via mobile phone. Next, the issue about the halal is the halal literacy, which is a halal logo. One of the most vital elements of the halal food packaging is the halal logo. Consumers rely heavily on the halal label on the product package as it communicates important cues of the halalness of the product. Credence of the food is imperative to the consumer as it validates the products assumed to be halal and bring down to the reliability of the halal logo used by the manufacturer. Surprisingly, there are also some cases in which the consumer were doubtful of the authenticity of the halal logo on the food packaging, despite the fact that it is accredited by the distinguished authority such as the Department of Islamic Development Malaysia (JAKIM). Consequently, consumers, particularly the Muslim, were skeptical over the credence of the halal logo used by the manufacturer. Muslim consumers are facing earnest challenge with the halal issue. Uncertainty about the credence of the product claimed to be halal and the lack of the enforcement in monitoring of the halal food certification become a major concern for them. Recently, there are cases have been found to use the fake halal logo or logo that did not comply with the prescription given by competent authorities. As a result, consumers are getting more anxious and are beginning to question the credibility of the halal enforcement authority. The reported cases can be seen in the picture below. Shows that a warehouse in the Senai was used to smuggle frozen meat from abroad before they were repackaged with the fake halal logo and sold nationwide. Besides, the Johor Customs Department will detain the manager of a frozen meat supply company on suspicion of being involved in the smuggling activity by using fake halal logo. As a result, the consumers are more cautious in trusting the Malaysian halal logo. For that reason, Muslim consumers has started the practice of reading the product's label prior to their purchase. So why this issue still happen? Malaysian Quarantine and Inspection Service Department Markis and Custom are among the key determinants to ensure that all imported meat in the Malaysian market is halal, including those being used as ingredient for products made in Malaysia which are halal certified by the Malaysian competent authority. Until now, no laboratory can determine whether the cuts of meat or carcass are from animals slaughtered accordingly or not. If such meat uses the halal logo on its packaging, it is not easy to verify the claim. Although under the Trade Description Definition of Halal Order 2011 of the Trade Description Act 2011 enforced by the Ministry of Domestic Trade and Consumer Affairs (KBDN-HEP) provides for a fine up to 5 million. It is challenging to bring the matter to court because it is hard to obtain the admissible proof. That's all from me. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum. I'm Muhammad Shazani. I will continue this presentation. So next we will gonna talk about septic tank, which the issue is unregulated and poor maintenance of septic tank. So first of all, what is septic tank? Septic tank is a basic form of on-site treatment facility, consists of one or more compartments that provide treatment of sewage by means of sedimentation and anaerobic process. In other words, it also means that septic tank can be set as in situ sewage treatment plant because it helps treating the sewage water without connecting to the actually sewage treatment plant. But how? When the influent which the raw sewage flow into the tank, the heavier particle of substances in the sewage fall at the bottom of the tank and becoming a sludge, while the lighter substances like oil or grease will float on the top of the water known as scum. The microorganism that already exists in the environment will decompose the substances in the sewage, making it safer to be discharged. Septic tank can be made up from polyethylene, concrete, or fiberglass. The effluent, which the liquid that considered safe and less harmful after being treated by microorganisms through an aerobic process, it flows out of the septic tank into the soil absorption field or septic drain field. Via series of perforated pipe, the liquid then being absorbed by the soil or surrounding plant. In Malaysia, several types of on-site treatment system were used, such as a small sewage treatment system, individual septic tank, communal septic tank, and cesspit. I would like to highlight on cesspit because this type is the most type that used especially in rural or even suburban area in some part of Malaysia. Cesspit type of septic tank is the type that most easily to be built and lot more cheaper than others type of septic tank. This is because it is simply just digging hole in the ground and fill it in sewage water, especially fecal sewage water. Based on our research, there's no specific guideline regarding this type of septic tank in Malaysia. This building process of cesspit may not following a standardized guideline and cannot be considered as good and safe septic tank. This unregulated of building septic tank will lead to poor maintenance of septic tank itself. The problem with unregulated and poor maintenance of cesspit type of septic tank is because the building of the cesspit itself is not being standardized and being built correctly to ensure safetyness of using it. Then it will cause crack or may collapse over time, causing leakage of raw sewage into the environment. This also will causing the pollution, which is polluting the neighbor water sources, for example, ground, lake, or river. It also can cause waterborne disease such as cholera, typhoid, and many more bacteria causing diseases. Next is about sludge disposal, which the issue is the illegal dumping of sludge disposal. So, what is sludge? There's four types of sludge. The first one is drinking water sludge. It came from drinking water plant or tanks. It contains non-hazardous waste and does not require a complex processes of treating the sludge. Second is industrial water sludge. It came from warehouse, manufacturing premises, industry, and other businesses. It contains high amount of heavy metals, pathogen, and other chemical which can leach out if the sludge is not well managed. Uh, Third is fecal water sludge. It came from on-site sanitation system, septic tank, or cesspit. It contained within a human excretion, solid waste, urine and water, and other material that could not be disposed. The fourth and last is sewage sludge. It came from treatment of industrial wastewater sludge during sewage. It contained both organic and inorganic material, large amount of plant nutrient, some pathogen, and small amount of trace element. It might also contain human waste or other consumer product. The issue of sludge disposal in Malaysia is illegal dumping of it. In Malaysia, there's still not quite clear on who is managing the sludge disposal based on our research and finding. The law and policy is there, but the monitoring does not being done frequently. The only agency that directly managing fecal and sewage water is Indoor Water Consortium (IWK). However, it is not enough because it is only managing two types of sludge that can be considered less harmful and hazardous compared to the industrial sludge which may contain toxic chemical and heavy metal or hazardous chemical in it. Normally, small factories or business that dealing with this chemical are the individual that causing this issue. However, some large corporate may also involve in this. What we can do with the sludge? So according to Indah Water, several ways we can manage the sludge, either being disposed or reused. For this sludge disposal, we can dispose it as a landfill or incinerate it. For sludge reuse, we can use it as agriculture or landscaping, composing or co-compose, turn it into brick or tiles, used in power generation and also reforestation. So the ultimate use sometimes can be used as a land application of sludge on rubber plantation, composing, land reclamation, fertilizer, and also used in construction material. On a recent finding and research, there is a group of scientists from UITM that research on how we can use sludge powder as a material in a brick as a replacement from the concrete material. So it is quite interesting finding from this paper. The last part, which is about issues arise in food and agriculture during the COVID-19 pandemic. The first issue that we like to discuss here is changes of food consumption pattern during Movement Control Order (MCO). Before pandemic of COVID-19 announced, everyone has no restriction in terms of accessing to food, either processed food or fresh food. We can easily buy any food product that we prefer, which can be anywhere, anytime, or anything that we like. On my observation, we also does not quite mind on choosing type of food that can spoil quicker or need to be consumed in a shorter amount of time, like fresh produce, for example, fruit and vegetable, meat product, fishes, seafood, and other more. This food has shorter shelf life. We can easily buy it several times in a week, omitting the reason why we need food that can stay fresh longer for a longer time. After World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 outbreak as a global health emergency on 30th January 2020, several months after that, exactly on 18 March 2020, Malaysian government has started replacing all states in Malaysia under MCO after several days of positive COVID-19 cases, recording above 100 cases. This order restricts all citizen movement to reduce the outbreak of COVID-19 in Malaysia by closing all non-essential activities like education, several types of work, tourism, religious ceremony, and many more. It forces all citizens to stay at home for 14 days in the first MCOs. Unfortunately, this has triggered Malaysians to start buying grocery in a panic buying mode. They started to buy lot more groceries than usual, even though the store is still open during this order place, and also people are also allowed to go out and buy groceries or food. Another factor adding to this situation is people are afraid to go out, avoiding themselves from catching the coronavirus. However, their choices of food for the grocery was totally different compared before this pandemic. People tend to choose canned or processed food like canned sardine, instant noodle, frozen food, and dried food. Their reason is this type of food can last longer, cheaper, and also easy to be cooked or prepared compared to the fresh produce, which need to be consumed within 3 to 5 days. The uncertainty of when the MCO will be ended also adding the reason why people choosing this type of food. As we can see on the chart here, 40% of households consume less on fruit, while 40% more on instant noodle. They also cut down unneeded food like snack and sweet about 60% during the MCO. So the impact of this new food consumption pattern is producing waste of fresh produce, especially fruits and vegetables. This is because no one would like to include this fresh produce in their grocery when preparing for MCO. It will be abundance of fresh produce in the market, and if this continue, the supermarket will discard all these unfresh and spoiled products. As shown in the infographic by SW Corp studies on food waste around 8 until 19 May 2020 shows that 15.6% were unfinished bought food, which include the fresh produce. Moreover, as reported in the Star, farmer in Sandakan, Sabah has need to take the loss of more than 500 acres of orchard comprising bananas, pomelo, and other local fruit in that district. The second issue is the impact of MCO on the transportation of fresh food. So during the MCO period, restriction on movement have altered the function of each of the players in the chain by limiting the interstate movement, buying centers and operating hours, with some players not being allowed to function at all. High density markets such as a wholesale and night market were closed. As a result, the wholesaler, transporter as well as small timer retailer were temporarily excluded from the supply chain. These above restrictions are disrupted the supply chain at its most strategic point, which are the connection between the producer and the retailer through the wholesale and logistic operators. Wholesale serve the hypermarket, small time grocer, and also night market traders and also consumers. The above restrictions are disrupting the supply chain at its most strategic point, that is connecting point between the producer and the retailer through the wholesaler and the logistic operator. Wholesaler serve the hypermarket, small time grocer and night market traders, and also consumer. The MCO created panic demand from consumer to stock up their supply for future consumption. This caused an artificial shortage as producer will not be able to respond fast enough owing the restriction on movement as well as roadblock. This lead to an increase of 30 to 50% in vegetable price at the retail market. The increase in price, however, was not passed on the producer as the normal chain from the producer to the wholesaler was cut off. This left them with excess unsold vegetable and losses at the farm. The above is just temporary mismatch that will go back to normal sooner or later. On a good development under the MCO was the growing use of ICT for distributing the produce direct from the farm to the consumer. This is really proof that necessity is the mother of the invention. This development deserves to be supported by government to encourage startup in vegetable and fruit marketing and agribusiness too. The scope for future is big, especially in the area of supply chain, both local and international. The MCO uncovered a number of shortcomings that deserve serious attention to ensure our food security. First, the country is not well prepared for a shock in food supply management. This is understandable, such as a disruption was abroad and unanticipated. But as some experts have concluded, the future of agriculture is going to be rough owing to climate factors, resources depletion, growing complexity, and in-market dynamic, among others. Second, the MCO revealed that migrant level has become indispensable in our food supply system. It presents at every level of supply chain, from farm to logistic to wholesale and retail. Most believe that these migrants are good for the country as they provide cheap labor. It reduces the cost of production, but it does not reduce the price of the vegetable. But the cost that we pay is actually the lack of innovation in farming, technology and logistics, and wholesale distribution sector, simply because their labor is cheap. Most farm and business activities are menial in nature, with a little adoption of labor-saving technology such as Internet of Internet of Things (IoT), sensors, and other advanced gadgets. As a result, our food sector has failed to develop its competitive advantage despite a good fundamentals for food production. The country has depended on the cheap import in the last 6 decades, and they continue to increase yearly. The biggest MCO reveal of all is the true colors of our food security situation. Not only the problem with the food availability, but more so affordability, nutrition security, particularly among the informal sector workers and daily wages earners. When they cannot afford food for their family, the children will suffer from malnutrition, which in turn may affect their physical growth. That's all from us. Thank you.